The election season is over, and the Virginia primary is in the books. Now it's time for the fall election coming up in November. But before we do so, let's delve into the winners, the losers, and what's at stake in the upcoming Virginia General Assembly election this fall. It's State of the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's State of the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We hope that you're enjoying this beautiful weekend that we have here in Hampton Roads. It's a little wet, but of course, we're definitely going to make it. Hopefully that you're staying safe out there and ensuring that you're starting your summer off safe and that you're enjoying some relaxation and some time. Make sure you get some time off because we've had a very busy 2 years, a very busy year. I want you to be energized to come back, especially those here at the university, for the fall, ready to get going. As always, we have with us in studio our producer, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous, which you can hear every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. And yes, the hardest working man in radio also on Sunday. Well, again, we'd like to thank all of you for supporting us as we broadcast, like we always do, from the campus of the Norfolk State University, the largest and best HBCU in the Commonwealth. And we are broadcasting from WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. Well, this particular segment today, I'm really excited about it because it concludes our coverage of the Virginia General Assembly primary election. We're going to delve into the results. Those of you that went out to vote, those of you that had candidates to vote for in this primary election, I'm pretty sure that you're excited to get out there and vote, but it's not over yet. We've got the general election coming up in November where all 140 seats are up for election here in the Commonwealth. But before we get to that, we want to take a look at what took place on this past Tuesday, on June 20th. What happened? June 21st, we have some new faces that's representing some new places here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, for those of you that have been following the show, you know that during June, we have our primary election series that we like to break down. And I delve into, what's at stake. I delve into different races that are impacting Hampton Roads, that's impacting you, the issues, the policies that are on the table. These are things that I delve into to ensure that you are informed, to ensure that you know what's going on and what's at stake. And this election, no election is bigger than the next, but every year we tend to see where more is at stake, if that makes sense. So again, no election is bigger than the next, but more is at stake every single election. And this election, a lot more was at stake. So let's start with, when you went into the booth, what did you see? And this is thing called redistricting. Because of redistricting, we see where there are some traditional districts that maybe you've always voted in the past 10, 20 years, because population really didn't shift that much. And of course, we had legislators drawing districts in the traditional way that they've always drawn them. But this past year, we started electing individuals in new districts because of the new provision of redistricting here, which was a constitutional amendment approved by you, the voters, in 2020, which created a mechanism where we, the citizens, serve on a citizen review board and basically contribute to and help to redraw the districts, congressional districts, voting districts, city districts, the legislative districts. All of that is impacted. And more specifically, we're talking about the state legislature. Those districts were redrawn. And of course, it's a new system, and I've been very vocal about this, and I was out front saying that I didn't like the way that the new system was created. But of course, this is the system we have. So we're working with it. It's got some bumps and that we got to work out, but it's going to work. With that being the case, districts were redrawn. They were approved by the state Supreme Court. And now we have individual legislators that were incumbents, that are long-term public servants, that were pitted against each other, or they were put in districts where they felt like they couldn't really compete competitively. And they decided either to run against the incumbents, each other, which we had here in new Senate District 18 with Senator Louise Lucas and Senator Lanier Spruill, or they decided to retire, like Senator Norman up in Williamsburg, or they just decided to resign their seat and run for a new seat, like we had here with Angela Williams Graves, that was a former delegate that ran in a newly created Senate District seat here in the city of Norfolk, 21, and competed for that nomination in order to represent the Democratic Party in the upcoming election. So for those of you that went inside of the voting booth and you say, wait a minute, I'm usually voting for this person, but they're not on the ballot anymore. That's because of redistricting. And that's what we saw on that particular day of the election. Now, what did we see? Now, what are some of the results of redistricting, and what are some of the results that took place Tuesday? Well, I was fortunate enough to do election analysis as election expert. Some of you may have saw it on WTKR Channel 3 here and also WVEC, where I was asked to break down the election and the impact of the election itself and what we would actually see moving forward in the future. And with that, I stated that, number one, because of redistricting, we're going to see a lot of new faces, a lot of new people, a lot of new energy, and a lot of older, more experienced, long-term serving public servants that's not going to be there. And that's exactly what happened here in the Commonwealth. With that, we now see where we have legislators that we're not going to see in the fall, new faces we're going to see coming in the fall. And then some, they're going to really, they competed against each other. And unfortunately, we're going to lose some very experienced and well-liked public servants because of that. So let's take a look and see what we saw and what races were going to make a major impact moving in this particular contest. Now, according to the Virginia Mercury, there were 10 General Assembly contests to watch this past Tuesday, where they stated experience versus generational change really defined several races, especially on the Democratic side. Now, according to the Virginia Mercury, in Tuesday's General Assembly primaries, Virginia voters decided how much bigger this year's retirement wave should be. In other words, we had a lot of retirements because of incumbents deciding to leave as opposed to run again. With that being the case, the Democrats had a much busier day on Tuesday because of the more contested races than the GOP had. So we saw where in the Democratic primaries, there were more than half a dozen experienced Democratic senators that were going to return or replaced by a group of younger, more progressive candidates running on themes of generational change and bolder leadership. More than half a dozen. With there being only, you say, well, that's not that many, but there's only 40 senators in the total Senate. So we have a slight majority of Democrats, but over Republicans. But when you talk about more than half a dozen out of 40 and a little bit over half, let's just say 21, that's quite a bit of senators. That's almost 1/3 of Democratic senators that either are going to be replaced or pretty much we're not going to see. So with that being the case, we saw some changes. So let's go through the changes that we saw. Senate District 13, let's go up to the Greater Richmond area. Senator Joe Morrissey ran against LaSharice Ayer, former delegate, and he lost. LaSharice Ayer beat Senator Joe Morrissey by almost 2-1. That was a race that was out of Petersburg, also in the Richmond suburbs, where, there were a lot of people that were thinking that former Senator Joe Morrissey was too controversial. And you can take a look at, his history in the Senate and also private life and so forth. But they thought he was too controversial. Whereas LaSharice Ayer, by being a former state delegate, she looked to make a high-profile return to the state house. Not only that, but she painted herself as one that's pro-life. Painted herself as one that is in favor of women's rights as opposed to the pro-lifer of Joe Marcy, who was a Democrat, but also one that was more progressive on various issues affecting the greater community. So we saw where that particular race ended up, where she won that. So Joe Marcy did release a statement stating that he will no longer he's given up public office. But we'll see. You'll never know. Senate District 12, this was a GOP district where Senator Amanda Chase beat out two challengers, Glenn Studevert and Tina Ramirez. And this was a hard right, Senator Amanda Chase. So we see where that particular candidate really continues to play well with that Republican voting electorate in that area. As a matter of fact, she was censored by the Senate for making comments supportive of J6 MAGA protests, which turned violent, of course. And Republican voters in Chesterfield County, Colonial Heights, decided whether to send her back for 4 more years or send her home. But they decided to keep her as their representative. So the district leans solidly Republican. And with that, it will continue to be Republican. Senate District 18. Senate District 18 is one of the Senate districts, and we're going to take a look at 2 more. I tell you what, before we take a look at Senate District 18, let's take a look at the other 2. Then we'll get into 18. So Senate District 33, Jennifer Carroll Foy versus Hala Ayala. These are 2 members of the large class that was elected in the House in 2017's Blue Wave, where Jennifer Carroll Foy, of course, a former military cadet graduate, and Hala Ayala, who's someone that basically pulled herself up and worked toward the cyber cybersecurity and small business and so forth. So these are 2 people that were supported during the Democratic wave in 2017, endorsed heavily by all of the major candidates, major office holders. But we see where, and let's take a look at Ayala also had endorsements coming into this race from former candidate and Governor McAuliffe, former Governor Ralph Northam, Senate Majority Leader Dick Saslaw, and former House Speaker Eileen Fillicorn. And whereas Carol Foy was backed by current House Minority Leader Don Scott out of Portsmouth, and also a variety of organized labor groups. So she only had 1 major endorsement, whereas Hala Ayala had many. With that being the case, she ended up losing that race almost 2-1. Jennifer Carroll Foy is now the new Senate nominee for the new Senate District 33. So it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter what the endorsements are. At the end of the day, they do help. They do help tremendously. But at the end of the day, what really matters is how are you connecting with the people? Are you connecting with the people, and will that make an impact? And we saw where it actually did. Also, new Senate District 21 here in Norfolk, where Angela Williams Graves and Andrea McClellan pitted off against each other. And with that, we saw where Angela Williams Graves actually won that election almost 2-1. 2-1. So that goes to show you that, with that, here in the city of Norfolk, where we have a Senate district, again, a Senate district that is major. It doesn't cross over anywhere else. Is one where we see now this particular opportunity for the city of Norfolk to have its own Senate leader here in the Commonwealth. So that is absolutely phenomenal. I want to go back with Senator Chase and Studevert. It was a 38 to 39%. Now, of course, election where we see now, according to the current results, Studevert is leading that and is considered the winner. But we'll see what happens if there is a contest to it. But Senator Chase is no more the incumbent, but now it is Studevert that is going to be the candidate if that continues to hold as is. I wanted to make that correction. Now, let's get to the Senate District, Senate District 18. Senate District 18. This is two very seasoned candidates, two very seasoned public servants, none other than Senator Louise Lucas and Senator Lionel Spruill. With that being the case, we knew that we were going to lose one of those candidates. We're going to lose one of those longtime public servants. And that's exactly what we saw happen in this particular election. We saw where Senator Lionel Spruill actually lost that particular race. And it was very close. When I say close, 1,100 votes is not a lot of votes when you're talking about individuals over 10,000 voters came out and voted. It's not a lot of votes, but it was definitely enough to push Senator Louise Lucas over, and she is now still the senior senator in the Commonwealth, in the Senate. That is huge. So we see again where these elections themselves actually play very well with a lot of voters, and they got out to vote. Still low voter turnout, but in a lot of these districts, voters got out to vote. And a quick nod to Senator Craig Deeds, is an incumbent, and also NSU alum, Senator Lamont Bagby, also won 72% of the election voter ballots that were cast, where he retains the nomination for his seat there. So hats off to our alums, Senator Louise Lucas, Senator Lamont Bagby, and again, all of our supporters. Now, there was a new district that was created where Delegate Jackie Glass represented Norfolk State. Now we have another, Benita Adams, Anthony, that is going to represent Norfolk State in a new district here in the Commonwealth. And also, where we have another Senate district that's going to represent us as well. So we're very excited about what we see in the politics and what's happening. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of new changes and a lot of new faces. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Lavelle. What we're doing now, we're breaking down the Virginia primary election results, looking at the winners, those that lost. Also, in the second hour, half hour here that we take a look at the second part of the show, what's at stake? What does this mean? What are the implications moving into the November election and beyond? I mentioned earlier that Senator Louise Lucas is the senior state senator now, and that comes with a lot of privileges. The implications of her still being a part of the Senate means that she's a senior member of the Senate, which means that now she has the ability to assign certain committees, the ability to do a lot of things behind the scenes within the body of the legislature, which comes with seniority. So that also comes with the possibility of serving on very important committees as well, and ensuring that things are, as far as the Senate itself, the agenda, it comes with help to set a lot of that. So time and grade matters. And those of you that are military or civil service workers, you understand what I mean. Time and grade does matter. And we also see where in the way that redistricting really created a new map for us. The way it created a new map, we now see where it's very possible that the Democrats will retake the House and maintain the Senate. In the event that the Democrats do take the House and keep the Senate as well, that means that for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, we will have the Speaker of the House, which will become Delegate Dunn Scott, which means that he would be the first African-American male as the Speaker of the House in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A huge, huge deal, a major deal, major. And I want to make sure that we understand the implications of that, where we have now 2 African Americans that will be at the leadership of the 2 houses of government here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That is absolutely remarkable. So again, when opportunity comes, you're prepared for that opportunity. You're given the ability to make that opportunity work for yourself. Step up. And as voters, that's what you said, and that's what you're doing, not just this past June, but continue to do so in November as well. Now, even though the House and the Senate may go Democratic, now again, the House could stay Republican. It can. But the way the lines look, the Democrats should take the House back if voters get out and vote. But that also means that the executive houses are still within the grasp and control of the Republicans, and which means we'll still have Governor Glenn Youngkin as our governor, of course, the Attorney General, and also the Lieutenant Governor as well. Now, what does that mean for Hampton Roads? In Hampton Roads, that means that the senior-most senator will be from Hampton Roads and representing Hampton Roads, Portsmouth, Chesapeake area. That means that the Speaker of the House, the Portsmouth area, will be Don Scott, both African Americans. That also means that the governor, who is from Virginia Beach, will still be governor. The Attorney General, who resides in Virginia Beach, will still be Attorney General. And the Lieutenant Governor that continues to live in Virginia Beach will continue to be the Lieutenant Governor. As it relates to politics, as it relates to the power of the pen, as it relates to the power of the pen to create policy, that means that Hampton Roads is the center of legislative power in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That is, again, absolutely remarkable. And I want us as listeners to understand how powerful that is. That right here in Hampton Roads, that we are representative of all the major leadership positions in government. That is major. And again, as a person of policy and law, I want us to understand just how important it is. And hats off to all of those individuals that are making it happen. So Hampton Roads, we're at the center. So some things that we should talk about here, given all the rain that we have. Let's look at climate change. Let's look at flooding and things of that nature. But, there are many other things, but that definitely comes to mind, especially as we continue to maneuver in this area. So we see what is happening, all right? We see what is happening. We see what is taking place as it relates to the election, as it relates to the results of the election and the like. So now the question becomes, what is the issues? What are the issues that will become major moving forward as it relates to this particular election cycle in next year? What is that? So in 2023, the campaigning for the general election for legislators will begin probably next month. August, you're going to see it, the foot to the pedal. But July, you're going to see a little bit. But August, let's go. It's happening. What are the issues at the forefront? What are the candidates saying is going to happen? So we probably will see, number one, education is going to be at the top of that list. Education at the top of that list is paramount to especially the Republican side of the aisle. We're now dealing with issues in the classroom that parents have brought up, such as teaching of history, DI, and so forth in the higher education circle. Those issues become major. Not only that, but it becomes also an issue for Democrats as well, where when you teach history, what are you teaching? Are we teaching the whole history, or are we making history palatable to the taste of individuals today? In other words, leaving some things out. And is that complete history? Some would disagree. But not only that, but we're also going to see women's reproductive rights. Women's reproductive rights, the ability to choose to keep a child, or to terminate a pregnancy, the ability to choose whether what you want to do with your body, that is at the very top of the list. That is one of the major issues that Democrats are going to champion as far as rights for women, reproductive rights for women. And that's an area that the GOP is really kind of battling with. Where do we stand as a party? Because the landscape is shifting as it relates to that particular issue. LGBTQ rights, those are other issues that we're going to see play out, especially as it relates to education and what are the rights of that group in the classroom or in public schools. What are the rights of the other parents and other students in public schools as it relates to gender, as it relates to competition in sports, as it relates to bathrooms. What's the issue there? What is the issue? So we're going to see a lot of that become a major issue as well moving into this election cycle. The fourth issue, I think, is going to be a major flashpoint as we move into this election cycle. Voting rights. Voting rights. Now, what about voting rights? During the Northern administration, we saw where the voters, that administration opened up access to the ballot box. But we saw that start to become attacked the very next legislative cycle. And it's still under attack. Lessen early voting time. Not giving so many precincts to vote in. It's just a lot that's taking place, a lot that's happening around that issue because, again, voting is the key. So when you don't have the numbers, but you have the ability to create mechanisms to, let's just say, not so much stop voting, but put barriers up to impede voting, that is of concern because many organizations, many people fought for the right to simply vote. So we got to make sure that we protect the right to vote of everybody, every single body. So if everybody has the right to vote, that definitely levels the playing field itself. But not only that, but we also see where the economy will be a major issue moving into this and next election cycle. The economy is paramount because without the ability to have a good job, good wages, living wages, it's impossible really to do anything else. So watch out for those top 5 issues and a few other issues that may pop up, but those are going to be your top 5. Listen, I don't know about you, but I'm excited about when democracy works. I'm excited about when people get out to make their voices heard, when individuals get out to say, hey, I want this person to represent me, or this is the policies that we want to see. Is your government, is your representative, is your city, is your community, is your country. Continue to make your voice heard, continue to be involved, continue to be engaged, and continue to listen to Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. We thank you for joining us once again and supporting us like you always do. Continue to stay locked in because we're going to continue to cover this election moving forward. Until then, be great, do good, and make sure you're safe out there this summer. And yes, as always, God bless. We'll see you next week.